Reincarnated at 32 from a workaholic heart attack, senior developer Nathan Chen is instantly reincarnated back into his 21-year-old college body. Armed with 12 years of future tech knowledge and crucial life experience, Nathan gets a cosmic do-over. The story drops him on the very day he was originally rejected by his longtime crush, Melissa Chen. Reincarnated as a college programmer, debugging romance and the future. Chapter 1, The Blue Screen of Death of Dignity. Nathan Chen died at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, which was honestly the most predictable thing about him. He was 32, had 3 monitors, 2 energy drinks in his system, and 1 massive heart attack that struck while he was debugging a particularly nasty recursive function. His last thought wasn't of regrets or loved ones, it was, wait, did I commit that code to the repository? So when he woke up to sunlight streaming through flimsy dorm curtains, the smell of instant ramen that had achieved sentience, and his college roommate's atrocious dubstep music, Nathan's first coherent thought was, this is either heaven or I've been hired by a startup with terrible interior designers. Dude, you awake? His roommate Jake poked his head around the divider they'd made from a bedsheet and delusion. It's already 10 a.m. Didn't you have that thing with Melissa today? Nathan sat up so fast he hit his head on the top bunk. Several things crashed into his consciousness simultaneously. He didn't have a roommate named Jake anymore. Jake had moved to Portland 5 years ago to find himself through artisanal pickle making. He didn't live in a dorm. He had lived, in a depressing studio apartment where the kitchen was also the bedroom, was also the office, was also the place where hope went to die. Melissa. Oh, God. Melissa. Nathan stumbled to the mirror, and instead of his 32-year-old face, complete with the premature gray hair and the permanent eye bags that came free with senior developer positions, he saw his 21-year-old self. Skinny, terrible haircut, a t-shirt that said, "Talk nerdy to me," that he'd thought was hilarious until approximately the moment after he'd bought it. No, Nathan whispered. No, no. Yes, 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 Jake called back, misunderstanding. Get dressed, man. You're meeting her at noon at the bell tower, remember? This is your big shot. Nathan's legs gave out, and he sat down hard on the ancient desk chair that squeaked like a dying mouse. The bell tower. Noon. The day he'd confessed to Melissa Chen, the campus beauty, the girl he'd been pathetically in love with since freshman orientation when she'd laughed at his joke about Schrodinger's cat. She'd later admitted she was laughing at the cat video on her phone, not his joke, which should have been his first clue. The day she'd rejected him so thoroughly that he'd basically avoided human romance for the next decade, channeling all his passion into code and convincing himself that meaningful relationships were just poorly optimized social algorithms. This couldn't be happening. Nathan had read enough isekai manga during his lonely nights to know the premise. Tragic life, sudden death, reincarnation with all your memories intact. But this was reality. Reality didn't have save points and respawns. Reality was permanent, like deploying to production on a Friday afternoon. Once you did it, you had to live with the consequences. I'm having a psychotic break, Nathan announced to no one in particular. Cool, can you have it afternoon? I've got money riding on this, Jake said. You bet on my love life? Dude, half the CS department has money on whether you'll actually go through with it. The odds aren't great. You spent 20 minutes last week explaining to that girl at the coffee shop why her choice of IDE was philosophically inconsistent with modern development practices. Past Nathan had done that. Past Nathan had been an idiot. Current Nathan, with 12 years of future memories, 3 completed startups, 1 failed marriage to a venture capitalist who turned out to be married to her quarterly projections, and intimate knowledge of exactly how badly this day was going to go, was possibly an even bigger idiot for being here. He checked his phone, a brick-like iPhone 4 that belonged in a museum, and confirmed the date. April 15th, 2012. The day his romantic life had effectively died so his career could flourish. The universe's cruelest trade deal. And here he was, apparently getting a second chance he never asked for. Chapter 2. compiling errors in the matrix. Nathan did what any rational person who'd apparently time-traveled would do. He Googled himself. Nothing. Well, nothing beyond his embarrassing DeviantArt account from high school. Oh God, he'd forgotten about that. And a few forum posts where he'd argued passionately about Python versus Ruby. His company, Nextcode, didn't exist. His patents didn't exist. His TED Talk about machine learning optimization, which had 2.3 million views and had been turned into a drinking game by drunk programmers, didn't exist. He was a blank slate, a factory reset, a clean repository with no commit history. This is fine, Nathan muttered, experiencing what he could only describe as existential Git merge conflict. Everything is fine. It wasn't fine. He had 2 hours until the most humiliating moment of his previous life, and he had to make a choice. Relive it or rewrite it. The logical choice was obvious. Don't go. Avoid Melissa. Spare himself the rejection. Take all his future knowledge, invest in Bitcoin and Apple stock, become a billionaire by 25, and live happily after ever as a lonely tech mogul with more money than social skills. But Nathan's fingers were already opening Facebook, back when Facebook was still cool, or at least pretending to be. Melissa's profile picture loaded, and his breath caught exactly the way it had 11 years ago. Melissa Chen was objectively beautiful. This wasn't nostalgia or rose-tinted glasses. Tall, athletic from her volleyball scholarship, with long dark hair and the kind of smile that made you forget how to perform basic arithmetic. But what had really killed Nathan, both then and apparently now, were her eyes. Sharp, intelligent, like she was always solving a puzzle no one else could see. She'd been a computer science major too, which had seemed like fate. Nathan had spent 2 years engineering coincidental meetings, helping her with assignments. She didn't need help. She was better at algorithms than he was, and convincing himself that surely she felt the same way. She hadn't. "You're a really nice guy, Nathan," she'd said at the bell tower, with actual pity in her voice. "But I just don't see you that way. I'm sorry. I hope we can still be friends." They had not remained friends. Nathan had been too mortified, and Melissa had graduated a year later and disappeared into Silicon Valley. He'd Facebook stalked her occasionally over the years, not his proudest moments, knew she'd gone to work for Google, then moved to some startup, then he'd stopped looking eventually. It hurt too much, like pressing on a bruise to confirm it was still there. "Dude, you're doing the thing again," Jake said, appearing with a Pop-Tart. "What thing?" "The creepy staring thing. You look like you're trying to solve a murder or commit one. I can't tell which." Nathan closed his laptop. What if I didn't go?" Jake nearly choked on his breakfast. "Are you insane? You've been building up to this for 2 years. You've got a whole speech prepared. You memorized it in the shower." Oh God, the speech. Nathan had forgotten about the speech. It had been very earnest and very terrible, featuring at least one coding metaphor and a quote from Star Trek. He physically cringed, which Jake misinterpreted as nervousness. "Look, man," Jake said in his best supportive friend voice. Jake had been a good friend, Nathan remembered now, before life scattered them. "Worst case scenario, she says no, but you'll regret it forever if you don't try. That's what my therapist says." "You have a therapist?" "Dude, it's 2012. Everyone has a therapist. Anyway, you're going. I'll literally drag you there if I have to. I've got $50 on you at least making the confession, even if she shoots you down. You're a terrible friend. I'm a broke college student. Now get dressed, and please, for the love of God, not that t-shirt." Chapter 3. Debugging the Timeline. Nathan stood in front of his closet, a charitable term for a metal bar holding approximately 12 variations of the same outfit, and had an epiphany. He had future knowledge, 12 years of it. He knew every tech trend, every market shift, every mistake he'd made both personally and professionally. He could change everything. But should he? Time travel paradoxes had always annoyed him in movies. The grandfather paradox, the butterfly effect, the ontological bootstrap, all sloppy plot devices for sloppy storytelling. But now, potentially living one, Nathan understood the appeal. They existed because time travel was terrifying. Change one thing and you might unravel everything. If he didn't confess to Melissa, would he still be driven to prove himself? Would he still work those 80-hour weeks that built his expertise? Would he still be the same person? Overthinking it, he muttered to himself, selecting the least offensive key-shirt. Plain blue, no slogans, a miracle. Classic Nathan. As he got dressed, muscle memory from his older self kicked in. He'd learned, eventually, how to dress like an adult. How to style his hair, somewhat. How to make eye contact during conversations without looking like a startled deer. 12 years of painful social calibration now trapped in his 21-year-old body. He looked at himself in the mirror. Still young, still awkward, but something was different. His posture maybe, the way he held himself. At 21, he'd been hunched, apologetic about taking up space. At 32, mentally, he'd earned his arrogance through competence. Weird, Jake said, squinting at him. You look taller. Did you grow? That's not how human biology works. Yeah, but you look different. More, confident? It's unsettling. Go back to being nervous. It's more on brand. Nathan checked his phone. 11 a.m. 43 minutes until his doom, take 2. A crazy idea was forming. What if he could fix it? Not avoid it, fix it. He'd spent 12 years learning from mistakes, understanding social dynamics, reading every article about emotional intelligence to compensate for his natural deficit. He'd even been married, briefly, disastrously. He knew now what he hadn't known then. Relationships weren't like code. You couldn't brute force them. You had to actually listen, adapt, be vulnerable. All things 21-year-old Nathan had been spectacularly bad at. But 33-year-old Nathan, mentally, had learned. Oh, how he'd learned. A new plan formed, and Nathan smiled. Actually smiled, not the nervous grimace he used to deploy like a social defense mechanism. Jake, he said, I need to borrow your good shirt. I don't have a good shirt. The one you think is good. Oh, the button-up from Target? Dude, that's my interview shirt. $50. Deal. Wait, you have $50? Nathan did not have $50. 21-year-old Nathan was perpetually broke. But 33-year-old Nathan knew which stocks would surge next week. He'd figure it out. Probably. Chapter 4. Runtime Errors and Heart Palpitations. The bell tower was Stanford's most photogenic landmark, which was why it was the campus's premier location for romantic confessions, proposals, and, in Nathan's case, soul-crushing rejections. Nathan arrived 15 minutes early, which was 10 minutes later than his younger self had. Original Nathan had been there half an hour ahead, sweating through his shirt, practicing his speech, looking like he was about to attempt defusing a bomb rather than expressing human emotions. This time, Nathan sat on a bench, looking calm. He wasn't calm. His heart was doing things that probably warranted medical attention, but he looked it. Another thing age had taught him, fake confidence, until it becomes real confidence, which then becomes actual competence, which then loops back to justified confidence. Life was just recursion with extra steps. Nathan? He turned. Melissa stood there, and time did that annoying thing where it slowed down like a poorly optimized loop. She was wearing a red sundress and white sneakers, and her hair caught the light in a way that seemed personally designed to destroy his composure. But Nathan had 12 years of additional memories, including that disastrous marriage and 3 serious relationships. He'd seen beautiful women before. He'd even dated beautiful women before, albeit unsuccessfully. He could handle this. Hi, he said, standing up. Thanks for coming. Of course, Melissa smiled, and Nathan remembered this smile, bright, friendly, with absolutely no romantic interest behind it. Your message sounded important. Right. The Facebook message. Nathan had sent it at 3 a.m. in a burst of courage and energy drinks, something cryptic like, we need to talk about something important. Young Nathan had thought it sounded mysterious and intriguing. Yeah, about that, Nathan said, and then paused. This was it, the moment. In his original timeline, he'd launched into his prepared speech, a rambling confession that had used the phrase, "You've hacked into my heart," unironically. Melissa had let him finish, she was kind that way, before gently, awkwardly rejecting him. But standing here now, with future knowledge and past regrets, Nathan realized something crucial. He didn't actually want to confess. Not because he was afraid, but because he suddenly understood what his younger self never had. He hadn't loved Melissa, not really. He'd loved the idea of her. The beautiful, smart girl who represented everything he wasn't. Socially adept, confident, comfortable in her own skin. He'd built her up into a fantasy, a final boss in the video game of college romance. And that wasn't fair to her, wasn't fair to either of them. "I wanted to apologize," Nathan said. Melissa blinked. "What?" "For being weird, about helping you with assignments and always happening to be wherever you were studying. That wasn't coincidence. That was stalking, or at least stalking adjacent, and you were way too polite to call me on it." Several emotions crossed Melissa's face. Confusion, relief, the dawning understanding that she wasn't about to be confessed to. "Oh, I mean, I didn't think you were, dangerous or anything. Just enthusiastic?" "That's generous. The word you're looking for is creepy." She laughed, surprised. "Okay, maybe a little, but harmless creepy, like a puppy that follows you home." "I'm really selling myself here." "Sorry, that came out wrong." Melissa sat down on the bench, and after a moment, Nathan joined her. "Where is this coming from? You've been helpful, not creepy. Mostly." Nathan considered how to explain this without sounding insane. I've been doing some thinking about self-awareness and social calibration, and how sometimes we get so focused on what we want that we forget to consider what the other person wants. And I realized I've been that guy, the one who mistakes proximity for connection. Melissa studied him with those sharp eyes. "Did you take a philosophy class or something? You sound different." "Something like that." A pause. Students walked by, laughing. A frisbee sailed overhead. Normal campus life, the kind Nathan had barely participated in the first time around. "Can I be honest?" Melissa said. "Please do." "I thought you were going to confess to me today." Nathan's heart did a small flip. "What made you think that?" "Jake's been running a betting pool. He's not subtle." She smiled wryly. "Half the CS department knows. I've been dreading it, to be honest." Ouch. "Not because of you," she added quickly. "Just, you're nice, Nathan. You're smart and funny, and you'll probably be really successful someday. But I don't see you that way, and I hate rejecting people. It feels awful." "But you would have? Rejected me, I mean?" "Yeah," she looked apologetic. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. That's actually why I wanted to talk. To make it clear that I'm not that guy, or I'm trying not to be. I want to be someone who can be friends with you without ulterior motives, because honestly, you're really cool, and I'd rather have a friend than pine pathetically and make everything awkward." Melissa's expression shifted to something Nathan couldn't quite read. "You're serious?" "Completely. Though I should warn you, I'm terrible at friendship. I'll probably send you way too many coding memes and forget your birthday." "I can work with that." She held out her hand. "Friends?" Nathan shook it. "Friends." And just like that, the timeline split. The moment that had defined his previous life, that had sent him spiraling into romantic isolation and workaholic compensation, simply didn't happen? Chapter 5. Patching the Social Code. "What do you mean you didn't confess?" Jake was having what could only be described as a conniption. He'd been waiting at the dorm, bouncing anxiously, ready to provide either celebration or consolation, depending on the outcome. "I decided not to," Nathan said calmly, booting up his ancient laptop. But the speech, the planning, my $50. "Your extremely supportive friendship was motivated by gambling? That's not the point." Jake collapsed dramatically on his bed. "I don't understand. You've been obsessed with her for 2 years. Had he been? Nathan tried to access his younger self's memories, but they felt distant now, like watching someone else's life on a screen. He remembered the obsession intellectually, but couldn't quite connect with it emotionally. "I grew up," Nathan said simply. Since this morning? It's been a very educational morning. Jake stared at him suspiciously. Did you hit your head? You're acting weird. Confident weird. It's freaking me out. Nathan couldn't exactly explain that he'd lived an entire additional life and had apparently been granted a cosmic do-over. Let's call it an epiphany. It happens. Epiphanies are for old people and people who do ayahuasca. You're 21, and your drug of choice is Mountain Dew Code Red. Can't argue with that. His laptop finally booted up. He'd forgotten how slow computers used to be. His 32-year-old self's custom rig would have run circles around this brick. Nathan opened his IDE and stared at the assignment he was supposed to be working on, a basic sorting algorithm implementation. This was like being an Olympic athlete forced to compete in elementary school field day. But more interesting was what he could do with his knowledge. Bitcoin was still under $1. Apple was about to release the iPhone 5. He knew which startups would succeed, which ones would crash. He could be a millionaire by graduation without breaking a sweat. Except there was that pesky butterfly effect. Every change rippled outward in unpredictable ways. If he prevented his heartbreak with Melissa, would he still be motivated to build his career the same way? If he became rich too early, would he lose the hunger that drove him? And more importantly, why was he here? If this was real, and the persistent reality of his situation suggested it was, then why? What cosmic bureaucrat decided Nathan Chen deserved a second chance? You're doing the 1,000-yard stare thing again, Jake observed. Just thinking. About causality, determinism, and whether free will exists in a potentially predetermined universe. Cool, normal thoughts. Totally not weird. Jake threw a pillow at him. Come on, let's get lunch. You need to eat your feelings or whatever normal people do after romantic non-disasters. Nathan was about to decline. He had 12 years of technological advancement to potentially capitalize on, but stopped himself. Old Nathan, both versions, would have declined, would have stayed in the room, coding alone, convincing himself that social interaction was inefficient. And where had that gotten him? Successful, sure, but fundamentally lonely. Yeah, Nathan said, closing his laptop. Lunch sounds good. Jake nearly fell off his bed. Who are you and what have you done with Nathan? Character development, Nathan said. I hear it's all the rage. Chapter 6. Refactoring Reality. The dining hall was packed with students who all looked impossibly young to Nathan's internal 33-year-old. Had he ever been that carefree, that unconcerned with mortality and existential dread? Yes, he remembered. He had been. Then he'd worked himself into a heart attack. Earth to Nathan, Jake said, waving a hand. You still with me? Sorry, just thinking. You think too much. It's your defining characteristic, along with being allergic to social situations and wearing t-shirts that should be classified as weapons of fashion destruction. They grabbed food, Jake getting pizza, Nathan automatically reaching for a salad before remembering his 21-year-old metabolism could handle literally anything. He grabbed pizza too. When was the last time he'd eaten pizza without calculating the macros? They found seats, and Jake immediately launched into commentary on their classmates, a running narrative Nathan had forgotten he used to enjoy. Jake had this way of finding the absurd in everything, a lightness Nathan had lost somewhere between his first startup and his divorce. And that's why Professor Morrison definitely has a secret family in Nevada, Jake concluded. That's completely circumstantial evidence. The man has 2 phones, Nathan. 2 phones. One could be for work. That's what big polygamy wants you to think. Nathan laughed. Actually laughed. Not the polite chuckle he'd perfected for networking events. It felt good. There you go, Jake said triumphantly. See, you're already recovering from your non-rejection. By next week, you'll be back to your regularly scheduled programming of avoiding eye contact and muttering about code efficiency. Actually, Nathan said, making a decision, I think I want to try something different. Different how? Join clubs, meet people, actually participate in college instead of treating it like a technical certification program. Jake dropped his pizza. Okay, you definitely hit your head. Should I call health services? I'm serious. Nathan, you hate clubs. Last year you went to one robotics club meeting and spent the whole time explaining why everyone's approach was wrong. They asked you not to come back. Past Nathan had done that. Past Nathan had been insufferable. People can change, Nathan said. Not overnight they can't. That's not how character development works. It takes time, effort, probably therapy. What if I told you I did have therapy? Lots of it. And life experience. And I learned that being technically correct isn't the same as being right. And being smart isn't the same as being wise. And success means nothing if you achieve it alone. Jake stared at him. Did you join a cult? Is this a cult thing? Because I've seen the documentaries, Nathan. It always starts with sudden personality changes and pseudo-philosophical babbling. Not a cult, I promise. That's what someone in a cult would say. Nathan sighed. Explaining was impossible without sounding insane. But he needed an ally, someone who could help him navigate this bizarre second chance. And Jake, for all his sarcasm, had been a good friend. Was a good friend. Would be a good friend. Tenses were getting complicated. Okay, Nathan said carefully. Hypothetically, what would you say if I told you I'd lived all this before? That I died at 32, alone in a depressing apartment, successful but miserable, and I woke up this morning with a chance to do it all differently? Jake considered this. Hypothetically, I'd say you either had a very intense fever dream, or you need to stop watching so much anime. Also, you died alone. Dude, that's dark. Very dark. Which is why this time I want to actually live. Not just survive or succeed, but actually engage with life and people and experiences. Even the messy, inefficient, illogical parts. So your near-death fever dream taught you carpe diem? Something like that. Jake shrugged. I mean, sure, sounds healthy. Probably should still talk to a therapist, though. Student health covers it. It wasn't the reaction Nathan had hoped for, but it was better than being called insane. He'd take it. So, Jake said, returning to his pizza, this new Nathan who wants to engage with life, does that mean you're going to actually come to parties? Because there's one this Friday, and historically, you've treated social gatherings like they're written in a language you don't speak. A party? Old Nathan would have rather debugged Legacy Toad, but new Nathan, old new Nathan, this was getting confusing. Yeah, Nathan said, I'll go. Jake dropped his pizza again. Okay, now I'm calling health services. Chapter 7, Merging Branches. The rest of the week passed in a strange fugue state. Nathan attended classes where he already knew all the material, which should have been boring, but was actually kind of fascinating. He noticed things he'd missed the first time. The teaching assistant who clearly had a crush on the professor, the student who always sat in the back and was obviously smarter than everyone but too shy to speak up, the small human dramas that had been invisible to his younger, more self-absorbed self. He also ran into Melissa twice. The first time was at the library, where she was studying with friends. She waved him over, which would have been unthinkable in the original timeline. They talked for 10 minutes about a particularly tricky algorithm problem, and Nathan managed to be helpful without being condescending, a skill that had taken him years to develop. You're really good at explaining things, Melissa said. Have you thought about being a TA? He had been a TA in his previous life. It had been miserable. He'd treated students like debugging problems rather than humans. But maybe this time? I'll think about it, he said. The second encounter was at the coffee shop. Melissa was alone, staring at her laptop with the intensity of someone facing down a final boss. Need help? Nathan asked. She looked up, relieved. Yes, please. This data structures assignment is eating my soul. They worked together for an hour, and Nathan discovered something surprising. Melissa was funny. Not just pretty funny or polite funny, but actually hilarious. She had this dry wit that perfectly matched his own, and she made jokes about their professors that had him genuinely laughing. How had he missed this before? Oh, right, because he'd been too busy being in love with the idea of her to actually know her. "You're different lately," Melissa said as they packed up. "Good different or bad different?" "Good. More relaxed? Like you're not trying so hard." "Maybe I stopped trying and started just doing." "Deep. Did you get that from a fortune cookie?" "I contain multitudes." She laughed. "See, this is what I mean. Old Nathan would have actually explained where that quote came from. Walt Whitman, Song of Myself. There he is." Can't completely suppress the urge to be pedantic. It's genetic. As she left, Nathan felt something unexpected. Contentment. Not romantic interest, not the desperate longing that had characterized his previous relationship with Melissa, but genuine friendship. It was nice. His phone buzzed. A text from Jake. "Party tomorrow. I'm physically dragging you. Resistance is futile." Nathan smiled. The old him would have found an excuse, but the new him, old new him, whatever, was trying something different. "See you there," he texted back. Chapter 8. Deploying to Production. Nathan had been to exactly 3 parties in his original college experience, and he'd hated all of them. Too loud, too chaotic, too much unstructured social interaction that didn't follow any logical protocol. But standing outside the off-campus house where music thumped and people laughed, 33-year-old mental Nathan recognized something 21-year-old Nathan hadn't. Parties weren't about the party. They were about the connections, the random conversations, the accidents that became stories. Also, he knew from bitter experience that networking mattered. Half his career opportunities had come from people he'd met casually, and the other half from people those people knew. Social capital was real capital. "You look like you're about to storm a castle," Jake said, appearing beside him with 2 red cups. "Here, liquid courage." "What is it?" "Better if you don't ask. Campus parties operate on a don't ask, don't tell policy regarding beverage ingredients." Nathan took a sip and immediately regretted it. It tasted like regret and bad decisions. "Horrible, right?" Jake grinned. "That's how you know it's authentic." They entered the chaos together. Music assaulted Nathan's ears, some dubstep monstrosity that probably violated the Geneva Conventions. People crowded every surface, talking, laughing, doing the kind of awkward dancing that suggested alcohol had been involved for some time. Old Nathan would have hated this, but new Nathan took a breath and thought, these are people, just people. You've pitched to venture capitalists and negotiated with Fortune 500 CTOs. You can handle a college party. "I'm going to find Sarah from my psych class," Jake said. "Will you be okay, or should I assign you a buddy?" "I'm 21, not 5. "Could have fooled me. Last party, you stood in the corner for an hour reading documentation on your phone." "That was a critical security update." "At a party, Nathan. A party." Jake shook his head. "Okay, new plan. Talk to 3 people, anyone, about anything except coding. Think you can handle that?" It was a challenge, and Nathan had never been able to resist those. Deal. Jake disappeared into the crowd, leaving Nathan alone. He surveyed the room like a technical problem. Identify the objective, assess the resources, execute the solution. Objective, talk to 3 people. Resources, a room full of drunk college students. Actually, he had no idea. In his previous timeline, this was where he'd failed. He'd stand awkwardly, radiating discomfort, until someone took pity on him or he gave up and left. But that Nathan had been afraid of rejection, of saying the wrong thing, of being judged. This Nathan had already died once. What was a little social awkwardness compared to that? He approached a group discussing something animated near the makeshift bar. "Hey," he said, "mind if I join?" They looked at him, a moment of assessment, then one girl smiled. "Sure, we're debating whether Die Hard is a Christmas movie." "It absolutely is," Nathan said automatically. "Thank you," the girl said triumphantly. "See, Mark, I'm right." Mark, a tall guy wearing a Stanford football shirt, shook his head. Just because it's set during Christmas doesn't make it a Christmas movie. By that logic, Batman Returns is a Christmas movie. Batman Returns is a Christmas movie. They were off, and Nathan found himself genuinely enjoying the absurd debate. No one cared about his credentials or his coding skills. They just wanted someone to argue with about pop culture. After 10 minutes, he excused himself. 1 conversation down, 2 to go. The next was easier. He found 2 guys arguing about the best programming language, and he couldn't resist. Trick question, he said, interrupting. The best language is whichever solves your specific problem most efficiently. Language wars are just ego with extra steps. They blanked at him, then laughed. Dude, that's the most diplomatic thing I've heard all night. Also the most boring, the other added. Come on, you have to have an opinion. Fine. Python for rapid development, C++ for performance, JavaScript for web, and COBOL for eternal suffering. That got a laugh, and they pulled him into their conversation. They were CS majors too, freshmen who reminded Nathan of his younger self, eager, opinionated, still convinced that technical knowledge was the only knowledge that mattered. He wanted to tell them, it's not. Social skills matter, teamwork matters, understanding that you're wrong sometimes matters. But they'd have to learn that themselves. He had. 2 down, 1 to go. The third conversation found him. He was getting another drink, water this time, he'd learned his limits the hard way, when someone tapped his shoulder. Nathan? He turned. Melissa stood there in jeans and a Stanford sweatshirt, looking surprised and pleased. You came, she said. Jake said you would, but I didn't believe him. You hate parties. Trying new things? Me too. Normally I'd be studying, but my roommate insisted I have a life or whatever. She smiled. Want to escape to somewhere quieter? The backyard's usually empty. They escaped together, finding a relatively quiet spot on a bench under string lights. The party noise faded to a dull roar. Better, Melissa said, sighing. I like people, but in smaller doses than parties provide. Same. Really? I always thought you hated social stuff generally. It's not that I hate it, I'm just bad at it. Like someone who's terrible at basketball trying to play in the NBA. The effort to reward ratio is awful. Melissa laughed. That's the most Nathan explanation of social anxiety I've ever heard. I prefer to think of it as social optimization challenges. Even better. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. In his previous life, Nathan would have filled this silence with nervous chatter or awkward attempts at flirtation, but he'd learned that sometimes silence was okay. Sometimes it was better than words. Can I ask you something? Melissa said, finally. Sure. The other day, at the bell tower, were you going to confess to me? Nathan considered lying, then decided honesty was less complicated. Originally, yeah. That was the plan. What changed? I realized that I didn't actually know you. I was in love with the idea of you. Smart, pretty, successful, everything I wasn't. But that's not fair. You're not an idea. You're a person. And I'd rather know you as a person than worship you as an idea.
Melissa was quiet for a long moment. That's really mature.
I have my moments.
Most guys would have just gone through with it anyway. The confession, I mean. Shot their shot and hoped for the best.
Most guys didn't have, Nathan caught himself, didn't have the benefit of living this already. Enough self-awareness to realize it was a bad idea.
Well, I appreciate it. And for what it's worth, I'm glad we're friends. You're more interesting than I thought you'd be.
That's a ringing endorsement.
I mean it. You're smart and funny, and you don't treat me like I'm just a pretty face in CS class. Do you know how rare that is?
Nathan did know, actually. He'd watched enough of his female colleagues deal with condescension and unwanted attention to understand. In his previous timeline, he'd probably been part of the problem, though he'd never had the self-awareness to realize it.
For the record, he said, you're way better at algorithms than I am. Your solution to that tree traversal problem last week was elegant as hell.
Melissa's smile could have powered a small city.
You noticed that?
Hard not to. Most people brute force it. You actually thought about the structure.
Okay, now you're making me blush.
They talked for another hour about CS theory, about their classes, about their completely different approaches to problem solving. Melissa was more intuitive, seeing patterns where Nathan saw logic. Neither was better. They were just different. And Nathan realized something. In his previous life, he'd been so focused on winning Melissa's romantic interest that he'd missed the opportunity for something potentially better, genuine friendship with someone who understood him. "I should get back," Melissa said eventually. "My roommate will think I ditched." "Same. Jake's probably convinced I've been kidnapped." They stood, and Melissa surprised him by hugging him. Brief, friendly, not romantic, but not affectionate either. "Thanks for this," she said, "for being cool. Thanks for giving me a chance to be." After she left, Nathan sat alone for a few minutes, processing. His phone buzzed. Jake, asking if he was still alive. Nathan smiled and headed back inside. 3 conversations completed. Mission accomplished. Chapter 9. Debugging the Future. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm that was simultaneously familiar and completely new. Nathan attended classes, did assignments that were laughably easy with 12 years of future knowledge, and actually socialized. He joined the robotics club and managed not to alienate everyone. He got coffee with study groups. He texted with Melissa regularly, their friendship developing naturally without the weight of unspoken romantic expectations. And slowly, carefully, he started to build his future. The question was, should he? Nathan spent hours staring at investment sites, his finger hovering over buy buttons. Bitcoin, Apple, Amazon. He could be a millionaire by graduation, a billionaire by 30. But something held him back. Maybe it was fear of the butterfly effect, get too rich too fast, and who knew what would change? Maybe it was his conscience. Was it ethical to profit from future knowledge? Or maybe, Nathan admitted to himself one night, he didn't want to be that person, the person who won through cheating. He'd built his success the first time through hard work and talent, and crippling work addiction and social isolation, but still, did he really want to undermine that? "You're overthinking again," Jake said, noticing Nathan's 1,000-yard stare. "It's my default state." "What's the dilemma this time? Vim versus Emacs? Tabs versus spaces?" "Bigger, like life direction bigger." Jake put down his game controller. "Okay, you have my attention. What's going on?" Nathan almost told him, almost explained the whole insane truth, the time travel, the death, the second chance, but how could he explain without sounding delusional? "I'm thinking about starting something," Nathan said instead. "A company, maybe, or at least a project that could become a company." "Dude, you're a junior. Most people don't start companies until after graduation." "Most people aren't me." "That's either confidence or arrogance. I can't tell which." "Let's call it informed self-assessment." Jake studied him. "You're serious about this?" "I think so." "What kind of company?" And here was the dilemma. Nathan knew which ideas would succeed. He could recreate Instagram or Uber or any of a dozen startups that would become unicorns. But that felt wrong. Not just ethically, but creatively. Those were someone else's ideas. What if he did something new, something he couldn't do the first time because he hadn't had the confidence or the vision? "I'm not sure yet," Nathan admitted, "but something that matters, not just another app or platform, something that actually helps people." "Heavy. I like it," Jake grinned. "When you're a billionaire, remember the little people. Specifically, remember your college roommate who believed in you." "You're betting against me in pools." "That's just good financial diversification." That night, Nathan opened his laptop and started coding. Not an assignment, not busy work, but something real. He didn't know what yet. The idea was still forming, but his fingers moved across the keyboard with the confidence of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Because he had, just in a different life. Chapter 10. Compiling the Heart. Finals approached, and with them the end of the semester. Nathan had managed to completely alter his timeline. He wasn't heartbroken, wasn't isolated, wasn't on the path to becoming a successful but miserable workaholic. So why did he feel so unsettled? "Penny for your thoughts," Melissa said. They were studying together at the library, a regular occurrence now. Melissa had become his closest friend besides Jake, which was surreal given his previous timeline's pining and rejection. "Just thinking about next year," Nathan said. "Big plans?" Maybe I'm considering actually doing something with my skills beyond just getting good grades. Like what? Nathan hesitated. He'd been developing an idea, something that combined machine learning with accessibility features for people with disabilities. It was ambitious, probably too ambitious for a college junior, but he had knowledge and experience that his peers didn't. I want to build something that helps people who are locked out of technology, he said. Better interfaces for people with disabilities, AI that actually understands context and needs. The tech exists, but no one's implementing it right. Melissa's eyes lit up. That's amazing. Why didn't I know you were interested in accessibility? Because his previous self had been too focused on proving he was the smartest person in the room to care about actually helping anyone. It's a newer interest, Nathan said, but it feels right. I want in. He blanked. What? If you're doing this, I want to help. I've been looking for a meaningful project, and this sounds perfect. Plus, you'll need someone to handle the UI/UX side, and we both know that's not your strength. She wasn't wrong. Nathan's interfaces were functional but ugly, like IKEA furniture assembled by someone who didn't read instructions. Are you sure? He asked. It's a lot of work. Nathan, I spend my free time optimizing sorting algorithms for fun. I think I can handle it. And just like that, his second timeline diverged further. In his previous life, he'd built his company alone, eventually hiring employees, but never partners. He'd controlled everything, trusted no one, and burned out accordingly. This time, he'd have help. He'd have Melissa. Okay, he said, let's do it. They shook hands, and Nathan felt something click into place. Not romantic, he'd let go of that fantasy, but something equally important. Partnership. Friendship. The kind of collaboration that built great things. Over the next few weeks, they planned. Melissa recruited 2 other students, a hardware specialist named James and a designer named Priya. Together, they formed a team that was actually balanced, unlike Nathan's previous solo ventures. They met in coffee shops and empty classrooms, sketching ideas and arguing about implementation. Nathan found himself actually listening to other people's suggestions, incorporating ideas he'd never have considered alone. You're good at this, Melissa said one night, after a particularly productive session. At what? Leading, collaborating, not being a know-it-all. She smiled. Don't take this wrong way, but you've really grown this semester. If only she knew. Thanks, Nathan said. I'm trying to be better. It's working. As they packed up, Melissa paused. Can I ask you something personal? Sure. Did you ever, at the bell tower? She struggled with the words. Were you in love with me? Nathan could have lied, should have lied maybe, but he'd built this friendship on honesty. I thought I was, he said carefully, but I don't think I knew what love actually meant. I was in love with the idea of you, which isn't the same thing. And that wasn't fair to you. And now? Now you're my friend, and that's better, more real. Melissa nodded slowly. Good, that's good, because you're my friend too, and I'd hate to lose that. You won't. After she left, Nathan sat alone in the empty classroom and realized something. He was happy. Not successful happy or accomplished happy, but genuinely, contentedly happy. He had friends, a project he cared about, a second chance he was actually using well. It wouldn't last. Happiness never did. But for now, it was enough. Epilogue, final commit. 3 years later, Nathan stood backstage at TechCrunch Disrupt, waiting to present his company's product. Accessy Tech had grown from a dorm room project to a legitimate startup with actual funding and users whose lives they'd genuinely improved. Melissa stood beside him, dressed professionally, but somehow still looking like she'd rather be in a hoodie debugging code. Nervous? She asked. Terrified. Good. You're always better when you're scared. The previous Timeline's Nathan had also stood on this stage, but alone, presenting a different product for a different company. He'd won the competition, gotten the funding, started the path to success and misery. This Nathan didn't know if they'd win, but he had his team, his friends, his partner, and that felt like enough. We're going to crush this, James said, joining them. Or die trying, Priya added helpfully. So dramatic, Melissa said, but she was smiling. Nathan's phone buzzed, a text from Jake, who was in the audience. Don't screw this up, I've got money riding on you. Some things never changed. We're up, Melissa said. They walked on stage together, and Nathan realized something. He had no idea how this would end. In his previous life, he'd known every step, controlled every variable, and ended up dead at 32. This time, he was improvising, collaborating, living rather than optimizing. It was terrifying. It was perfect. As he began the presentation, Nathan caught Melissa's eye. She nodded, confident and calm. They'd built something good together. Not romantic, but maybe better. Real. The audience applauded. The future stretched ahead, unknown and unwritten. And Nathan, who'd spent his first life trying to control everything, and his second life learning to let go, smiled. Let's show them what we've got, he said. And they did. The end.
I love making these videos for you. If you liked this story, then please like, subscribe to my channel, and switch on the notifications for more entertaining stories. Please also leave a comment for any story suggestions.